Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. It was an honor to become a soul sage before the age of 20. In fact, only Xiao Hongchen knew the price he had paid for this. In the next 5 years, his cultivation wouldn't see any further improvements. He made this sacrifice so that he could become a soul sage before the tournament. It was very difficult to tell how he might improve in 5 years' time. However, he didn't have any regrets. He wanted to beat all his opponents and reach the highest peak of the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. Countless cannon barrels fired off. Meng Hongchen also appeared behind him. She was wearing an icy blue suit of armor, and holding a long blue sword in each of her hands. With the fastest speed she could muster, she burst towards Wang Qiu'er. Her earlier surrender was tactical. She was going to defeat Wang Qiu'er this time to save her reputation. There was another person behind Xiao Hongchen, Yi Nongfeng. At this point, Yi Nongfeng lifted a special soul tool to his shoulder. The back of the soul tool was cylindrical, while the front of it was full of coils. Rings of glaring light were undulating, without any rhythm on these coils, and gathering towards the triangular tip of the soul tool. Yi Nongfeng's nickname was the Destroyer. His abilities weren't that great, and his one-to-one combat abilities were extremely weak. However, he specialized in creating and using all types of unidirectional offensive soul tools. He was willing to sacrifice everything to pursue this extremity. Such a person possessed great strength when used in a team fight, just like the Tang sect's Eye of Fear. He also possessed the ability to turn the tables in a fight. He and Qiu Yi were a combination. He was in charge of attacking, while Qiu Yi was in charge of defense. They were initially secret weapons that were brought in as substitutes. However, a few of the Sun Moon team's main team members had been killed by the Tang sect, so they now had no choice but to fight. They were now revealing their true abilities for the first time. Up on the main stage, the pale-looking Shu Qianran finally smiled. He looked at Jing Hongchen and heaved a sigh of relief. He said, "Hall Master Hongchen, you are really good at hiding things. These young people are the future pillars and talents of the empire." Jing Hongchen sighed and replied, "My grandson was very stubborn when it came to this tournament. To be honest, he consumed some special medicine to enable himself to cross the rank 70 barrier and become an advanced level soul engineer. However, he'll be affected by that medicine for the next few years. Before he's 25, I'm afraid he'll be unable to make any further improvements." Shu Qianran said seriously, "His spirit is commendable. He's willing to sacrifice for the glory of the country. No matter what happens to the Sun Moon team in the end, he'll be a pillar of our empire in the future." Jing Hongchen was relieved after hearing Shu Qianran's words. He was also very excited right now. As long as his grandson and granddaughter could defeat Shrek's team in this fight, they would make history for the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. The four who burst forward with Wang Qiu'er didn't panic, because their opponents demonstrated great strength. The four of them gathered together, and layers of light started to spread rapidly, forming a huge protective net that covered all four of them. This was the Lan sisters' soul skill, the hairnet. The four of them maintained their formation and quickly moved towards Wang Qiu'er. With Ning Tian's enhancement, the Lan sisters' hairnet became very resilient even though they only had 4 rings. The hairnet managed to block all the streaks of lights that were fired towards them. However, it was very difficult for them to advance. Xiao Hongchen didn't panic at all. Lan Xiu and Meng Hongchen were enough to restrain Wang Qiu'er. Not to mention that Wang Qiu'er was depleted from the earlier fights. Could she resist the suppression of 2 Class 6 soul engineers even if she was in her peak state? Lan Xiu was also a Class 6 soul engineer. Otherwise, how could he possibly control the 9 glories, which were Class 6 soul tools? After Wang Qiu'er was forced back, she didn't continue to fight her way out anymore. She started to shift positions quickly, and avoided the pursuit of the silver lights in the air. However, the 9 glories seemed to be alive under Lan Xiu's control. The 9 streaks of silver light intersected in the air. At times, they formed a cage. At other times, they formed a net. Wang Qiu'er was greatly restrained, and couldn't get close to the Sun Moon team. Wang Qiu'er still remained very persistent even though she was greatly suppressed. Her gaze was as cold as ever. Her spear kept on flashing, and she occasionally lifted her head to observe the 9 glories. She seemed to be waiting for something. At this point, Meng Hongchen arrived. Her pair of swords carried streaks of sword light that were unleashed towards Wang Qiu'er. In the air, the 9 streaks of silver light descended at the same time. 3 streaks were aimed towards her right arm, while the other 6 wove a cage that moved towards her body. They seemed to be trying to pin her to the ground. As Meng Hongchen arrived, the vermilion clear ice toad's poison also started to engulf the entire Shrek team. However, a layer of blurry, golden light started to shine from everyone from Shrek's team. The golden glow didn't appear to offer any form of defense, but it managed to block out the poison. Shrek's team was prepared, knowing that Meng Hongchen could poison them. Shrek Academy had its own soul tool department too. Every member of Shrek's team was wearing a type of accessory known as an isolation type soul tool. It could isolate all types of aura from one's body. Such soul tools were very effective against lethal poisons and polluted gases. They were specially used to resist the abilities of certain special martial souls. They could even isolate some special elements. Simply put, it could greatly isolate the fire elements of an opponent's attack, even though the impact of the attack couldn't be avoided. Of course, there was a price to pay for using such a soul tool. The depletion from using such a soul tool was equivalent to a Class 5 protective soul barrier. Even if one wasn't attacked, the depletion would still persist. However, the effect was very useful for Shrek's team right now. They were isolating the poison from the vermilion clear ice toad. Wang Qiu'er stood straight, without moving, as she faced a crisis. Against Meng Hongchen's sword lights, there was only a cold look in her eyes. "You are still so arrogant at this point." Meng Hongchen was furious now. Although she had conceded defeat earlier for tactical reasons, she wasn't convinced by Wang Qiu'er at all. They were both soul emperors, and she even possessed the abilities of a Class 6 soul engineer. She didn't think she was inferior to Wang Qiu'er at all. At this point, the 9 streaks of silver light that were crashing down towards Wang Qiu'er stopped in the air. Yes, they stopped. Following this, a weird streak of light appeared above Lan Xiu's head. It was only large as a palm as it drifted above Lan Xiu, but Lan Xiu seemed very lost, and the 9 glories that he controlled started to dim. They weren't the only ones with a control-type soul master. Cao Jinshuan's 1st and 4th soul rings lit up at the same time. Just as the silver lights stalled in the air, Wang Qiu'er exploited the flaws that had been exposed. She ducked out of the encirclement of the silver lights. Following that, she stabbed her spear ferociously towards her opponent's chest. Meng Hongchen's Class 6 ice swords couldn't compare to the Golden Dragon's spear in terms of length. Her sword lights had been unleashed towards Wang Qiu'er's vital areas under the assumption that she wouldn't be attacked by the Golden Dragon's spear. Shit, their control-type soul master is up. Meng Hongchen didn't dare to delay any further. The chest portion of her armor cracked open, and a barrel the size of a human head popped out. A beam of intense light shot out towards Wang Qiu'er. This was an extremely powerful Class 6 energy-gathering soul cannon. What about Wang Qiu'er? She didn't even have any intention to dodge, and followed her spear. She was one with her spear. A sonorous dragon roar reverberated across the entire venue as her 3rd soul ring lit up. A golden dragon head burst forward from her right hand. It seemed like it wanted to swallow the golden dragon's spear. Boom. The energy-gathering soul cannon charge was instantly destroyed as it was struck by the spear. The indestructible spear continued to shoot forward, its tip was about to reach the cannon's mouth. Meng Hongchen was horrified, and an icy domain shone beneath her feet. This was her 3rd soul skill, Ice Reflection. Within the domain of the Ice Reflection, she could shift her body as if she were using instant teleportation. Her first thought right now was to avoid the spear. As a light flashed, Meng Hongchen shifted 3 feet to the side. The spear struck nothing, but Wang Qiu'er landed following this. She forcefully stomped her right leg on the ground. Boom. When her right foot hit the ground, it felt as if a mature elephant had landed after jumping off a building. Immense sound waves and quakes affected the clashes in the other areas. The ground cracked open, and the domain formed by the ice reflection was immediately crushed. The spear generated a gust of wind as it swept across. It seemed to form a golden wheel as it shot forward. This was Wang Qiu'er's fighting style, extremely strong and forceful. "Meng, come back!" Xiao Hongchen shouted. He had originally thought that Lan Xiu and Meng Hongchen would be sufficient to deal with Wang Qiu'er. At least, he believed they could suppress her, and after he dealt with the rest of them, this team round would more or less be decided. Xiao Hongchen hadn't expected Shrek's control-type Soul Master to break Lan Xiao's control instantly, severing his connection with his 9 glories. This changed the entire situation. Meng Hongchen also wanted to return, but she had to handle Wang Qiu first. Since she couldn't dodge, she could only sweep her swords and activate the abilities of these 2 Class 6 soul tools. An intense chill spread out from both swords. 2 streaks of icy blue light intersected as they shot towards Wang Qiu. While my swords aren't as long as your spear, my sword lights are faster than you. However, Meng Hongchen didn't understand Wang Qiu's character. How could she let Meng Hongchen escape with such a good opportunity presented to her? The red lights used to deal with Ding Xiaobu earlier appeared again. Wang Qiu's eyes turned blood red. The golden scales on her body opened up, and her aura changed. The spear continued on its trajectory, and seemed to completely ignore the 2 blades. You underestimate me too much. Meng Hongchen was furious. She couldn't dodge at this point. She quickly summoned her soul power. She thought to herself, I'd like to see who's going to be hurt more. Bang! The 2 light blades landed on Wang Qiu's body first. However, Wang Qiu didn't even move. The blades flashed once before dimming after they struck her. Her scales started to tremble violently, and her clothes were also torn in 2 areas. After that, Meng Hongchen flew back. A crisp, snapping sound rang out, and her Class 6 swords were broken into 4 pieces by Wang Qiu's spear. After that, the spear struck Meng Hongchen in the chest. That banging sound was generated from the spear. Wang Qiu's 4th soul ring also shone at this point. 4th soul skill Golden Dragon Explosion. 6th soul skill Golden Dragon's Bloodlust. With the help of these 2 soul skills, Wang Qiu was in her peak condition right now. Why did she choose her Golden Dragon's Bloodlust? It was a decent soul skill for an ordinary soul master, but it was very average for a true, elite soul master. After all, this soul skill could only be used on one person. To most soul masters, using such a soul skill only increased their physical strength by 30%. The effect on their soul power wasn't too pronounced. However, it was different for Wang Qiu. She possessed ultimate strength. How strong would she be if her physical strength increased by another 30%? Moreover, she would be in the bloodlust state of a golden dragon. The increase wouldn't just be 30%. In addition, she still had Ning Tian's 7 treasures glazed pagoda strengthening her. Her strength had reached a frightening level. None of the Sun Moon team understood Wang Qiu, which left Meng Hongchen at a huge disadvantage. Meng Hongchen spat blood as she flew through the air. She collided with the barrier on the other side of the arena before falling to the ground. Not only were her swords broken, but the protective armor in front of her chest had also cracked. Her arms were hurt, and she was bleeding profusely. This attack hurt her internal organs. Meng Hongchen was critically injured. Younger sister. Xiao Hongchen shouted. His eyes turned red, and he burst out. All his barrels combined to form a huge cannon that was more than half a meter in diameter, before it fired towards the Lan sisters' hairnet. At the same time, he rushed towards Meng Hongchen. At this point, a strange bolt of white lightning appeared silently in front of Xiao Hongchen. The bolt of lightning targeted Wang Qiu, who was still in her original position after she took down Meng Hongchen. This bolt of lightning was too sudden. An intense glow quickly engulfed Wang Qiu. It was so quick that she didn't have time to dodge. Wang Qiu's body started to shake tremendously, and an astonishing scene appeared. Her powdery blue hair started to turn pale white. It lost its glow, and she fell to her knees. She was aging at an alarming speed. This was. Apart from Huo Yuhao, the rest of the Tang sex members stood up. He Kaitu was the most shocked. This was a soul tool that he and Huo Yuhao had never seen before. These were aging rays. It was a new soul tool that the illustrious Virtue Hall had invented. Once one was struck by these aging rays, their life power would quickly be depleted and they would quickly turn old and frail. In a worst-case scenario, they might even die. If their life power wasn't replenished in time, or wasn't strong enough, they would die from old age. It was a powerful Class 7 soul tool. It was still in the experimental stage, and could only be used on one subject. The person who researched this soul tool was none other than the one using it right now, Yi Nongfeng. He was known as the Destroyer, one of the most extreme talents among the younger generation of illustrious Virtue Hall's disciples. He was only interested in soul tools that could cause annihilation. Wang Qiue's forehead and right arm started to show wrinkles. After unleashing this attack, Yinongfeng also started to look very pale. He was only a Class 5 soul engineer. He had needed to use a milk bottle to activate this soul tool. More than 80% of his soul power had already been depleted, but his eyes were filled with a look of maniacal excitement. Wang Qiue was the first human subject he had used this soul tool on, and its effects were very obvious. This aging ray was invented and designed by him, and some other strong individuals in the illustrious Virtue Hall then helped him to complete it. Jing Hongchen had deliberately modified this soul tool for him to use as a reward for his pioneering spirit. Indeed, it performed a miracle right now. Team leader, the rest of Shrek's team exclaimed at this moment. To them, Wang Qiue wasn't just their team leader, she was their spiritual leader. If Wang Qiue collapsed, their morale and fighting spirit would be gone. Bastard. The hairnet was destroyed. Dai Huobin activated his White Tiger's Devil God transformation to resist Xiao Hongchen's attack. Seeing that Wang Qiue had descended to such a state, his eyes turned red. He peered into the sky and roared furiously. He used his right hand to pull Zhulu into his embrace. Instantly, a beam of strong white light shot into the sky. The entire stage turned into a world of black and white. A huge white tiger appeared from the sky, and seemed to traverse through space, instantly arriving in front of Yinongfeng, clawing at him. At this point, Lan Xiu also recovered from Cao Jinshuan's time lock, and quickly activated his 9 glories. He was about to stop the attack of the Netherworld White Tiger. However, the Netherworld White Tiger was a martial soul fusion skill. It was a skill that 2 noble families of the Star Luo Empire had combined to unleash for thousands of years. Their ancestors had even followed the first-generation sea god, Tang San, into the divine realm. The Netherworld White Tiger resisted the 9 deflection rays. After that, the tiger swept Qiu Yi to one side with its claws. Following that, it shut its claws and furiously attacked Yinongfeng until he was completely crushed. It was only when the 9 glories struck again that the tiger was forced back. Qiu Yi quickly returned in front of Lan Xiu, and his shield shone with silver light, boosting his defense to its maximum level. The attack of the Netherworld White Tiger had been too sudden, and it came when they were at an advantage. Yinongfeng's death was due to his carelessness. On Shrek's side, Dai Huobin and Zhulu weren't the only ones who acted. The Lan sisters also demonstrated their full abilities at this point. They held each other's hands and burst into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they filled the sky above the stage before descending. They were going straight for Xiao Hongchen, Meng Hongchen, and the 9 glories. This was their fusion skill, Empyreal Net. This was the true ability of Shrek's team. 2 martial soul fusion skills were used at the same time, increasing their fighting strength significantly. Of course, the price to pay for using these 2 fusion skills was also very big. After using them, their soul power would drop significantly. If not for the fact that Wang Qiue was struck by the aging ray, they wouldn't have used their fusion skills. At this point, a figure silently crept up behind Wang Qiue and stabbed a transparent draconic dagger towards the back of her neck. Ding Xiaobu, who had disappeared earlier, finally appeared. He had used some method to conceal himself temporarily. Team leader. Cao Jinxian and Ning Qian shouted at the same time. However, they had discovered it too late. At this point, the dagger was already stabbing towards Wang Qiue's neck. As he looked at the pale, long hair in front of him, Ding Xiaobu's eyes were filled with excitement. If he could kill Wang Qiue, there would be a great reward for him. Where was Jing Zhon? When the Netherworld White Tiger appeared, he was already lagging. The situation was too complex. Wang Qiue and the Hongchen siblings had taken most of his attention. He hadn't expected a martial soul fusion skill to appear in front of Yinongfeng, who had lost most of his fighting strength. When he rushed over, it was already too late. Ding Xiaobu was also exploiting this distraction and attempting to kill Wang Qiue. Wang Qiue was on the verge of death. However, something strange happened. A white, icy flower started to bloom behind the back of her neck. As a ding sounded, Ding Xiaobu's blade was deflected away by the flower. Following this, a miraculous scene occurred. That icy flower rippled with rings of golden light. A weird light distorted the air. The entire stage was dyed golden, with Wang Qiue's body the center of it. After this, a huge, golden vertical eye drifted up in mid-air, and gusts of air dragged Wang Qiue's body upward. Every gust of air left a dazzling radiance around Wang Qiue. Wherever they passed, pieces of armor would appear on her body. First, her chest was covered with armor. On this section of the armor, there were bright, flowery patterns. The icy flower kept on extending around her. What was weirder was that a vertical eye also appeared on Wang Qiue's forehead. The eye was shining with golden light. On closer inspection, the light from the eye seemed to actually belong to. The golden armor quickly engulfed Wang Qiue's entire body, her aura soaring. Sonorous dragon roars were ringing out continuously. Her pale white hair started to regain its glow and powder blue color from the roots. An illusory, golden dragon-shaped projection started to revolve around her body. The armor behind her back was carved with the image of the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion. However, her long hair covered half the image. Despite this, the scorpion tail that extended all the way to her hip region could be seen clearly. Wang Qiue slowly stood up straight, like a newly born war goddess. She pointed her spear forward, and the golden vertical eye in the air suddenly turned into a streak of golden light before it descended. Under the illumination of the golden light, Wang Qiue's entire body became 30% larger, and the golden dragon that surrounded her also seemed to turn real. What was going on? After he witnessed the changes to Wang Qiue's body, Xiao Hongchen revealed a grim look in his eyes. Did she mutate? Is she from the body sect, and this is the second awakening of her body soul? How is this possible? Her martial soul is already so strong. If this is its second awakening, it completely violates the laws of nature. Ding Xiaobu, out. Just as Xiao Hongchen was in a daze, Jing Zhon had already used his divine unbreakable shield to block the golden light that had almost pierced Ding Xiaobu's chest. This time, he was forced several meters back due to the impact, and knocked into Ding Xiaobu. Wang Qiue, who was completely covered in armor, revealed a strange look in her eyes. She had mushroomed in size. She was like a Valkyrie that had descended upon the battlefield. Just one gaze caused Jing Zhon to shudder. This aura. 9 streaks of silver light descended from the sky. The netherworld white tiger was deflected away again. It was a fusion skill that could be used continuously in a fight, which was very rare. However, its fighting strength would weaken as time passed if the user's cultivations weren't strong enough. After its initial outburst, the netherworld white tiger was restrained by Qiu Yi's class 7 shield and Lan Xiu's 9 glories. On the other side, the Hongchen siblings, who were trapped in the imperial net, also demonstrated their strongest abilities. Gua Meng Hongchen let out a weird sound. Following this, she grew a size larger. She seemed to be lifting the sky with her hands before her 6th soul ring lit up. She was going to use her 6th soul skill, which she had never used before. She sucked in her gut and grit her teeth. She appeared ferocious now, even though she was bleeding profusely from her nose and mouth. Her back arched, and a bulge quickly rose. Layer upon layer of icy blue light started to rise continuously from her, and a terrifying aura was soaring. Xiao Hongchen was much stronger than his sister. A streak of dark gold light shone from his body. He fell forward and also let out the same sound as his sister before turning into a 3-legged golden toad. However, he only maintained the 3-legged golden toad form for a moment before another transformation occurred. He changed into a golden powder that quickly disintegrated before gathering together again. In the blink of an eye, he had turned into a huge soul fort with countless barrels. Countless streaks of light shot out and resisted the imperial net. There were even a huge number of soul rays that were aimed towards Wang Qiue and the rest of Shrek's team. Ning Tian and Cao Jinxian were the focus of the greatest firepower. This showed that Xiao Hongchen could tell that the two of them were very important in enhancing Wang Qiue's strength. Cao Jinxian and Ning Tian didn't panic at all. Ning Tian stepped onto her shuttle before landing in front of Cao Jinxian. Although her shuttle couldn't fly very high, and could only remain 3 meters above the ground at most, it was still very quick. Following this, a layer of golden light lit up on her body. Invincible barrier. Xiao Hongchen was a 7-ringed soul sage and a class 7 soul engineer. The strength of the soul tools that he unleashed was extremely high. However, he couldn't overcome an invincible barrier used by a 5-ringed soul king. The appearance of soul tools gave many auxiliary-type soul engineers the ability to defend themselves on a battlefield. It wasn't something only realized in the Sun Moon Empire. The 7 Treasures Glazed sect had been very invested in soul tools over the past few years. Their aim was to mitigate the defensive weaknesses of their direct disciples. With the defense of the invincible barrier, Xiao Hongchen couldn't kill Ning Tian and Cao Jinxian without using his full strength. Compared to the two of them, the Lan sisters weren't doing too well. The two of them had used quite a lot of strength to unleash the Imperial Net. However, there was a limit to how much their strength would increase even if they were using a fusion skill. Their control of the Imperial Net could match up to a Soul Emperor, but they were facing a Soul Sage. Their Imperial Net was quickly dispelled by the Soul Rays. The Lan sisters looked very pale. In such an intense fight, their inferior cultivations were still limiting factors. No matter what, there was still a gap between the overall abilities of Shrek's team and the Sun Moon team. A similar situation occurred for the Netherworld White Tiger. The illusory light from the tiger's body started to dim. Dai Huabin and Zhulu's fusion skill couldn't last any longer. While it seemed like Shrek had gained an advantage earlier, this advantage was now slowly being eroded by the Sun Moon team. Wang Qiuer moved at this point. She lunged forward with her left leg and her spear in front of Xiao Hongchen. She was very quick. It was very different from earlier, when she had used her strength to enhance her abilities. Her spear thrust out, and the soul rays that were targeted towards her were destroyed. Her target was the steel fortress that Xiao Hongchen had formed. At this point, Meng Hongchen erupted after she completed her preparations. She bent forward and grabbed hold of her ankles. The bulge on her back burst open, and streaks of white, fluid light shot out towards Wang Qiuer. Even though there were only slightly more than 10 streaks of these lights, an indescribable, nausea-inducing feeling surfaced when they appeared behind her. Even Xiao Hongchen quickly backed off, and increased his distance from his sister. This was the Vermilion Clear Ice Toad's 6th soul skill, Corrosive Ice. She condensed her poison into a fluid before combining it with her soul power. Not only was its impact force great, the intensity of the poison was also extreme. This was Meng Hongchen's most lethal soul skill. She had tested it once before. One drop of her corrosive ice was sufficient to kill a diamond mammoth, an extremely large soul beast. As for humans, even a soul Doluor wouldn't be able to handle the poison. 5 and 6 ringed soul masters' invincible barriers would also be completely corroded upon contact with her poison. More frighteningly, her corrosive ice could lock onto its target and would pursue it. There was no way to avoid it, and it could pursue its target for up to a minute. The streaks of fluid that contained massive amounts of poison were targeted towards Wang Qiuer. Meng Hongchen was critically hurt by her earlier, and hated her immensely. She had used all her strength in this attack. Right now, her face was also very pale. The strength of her corrosive ice meant that she had used up almost all of her soul power. Its strength was equivalent to 3 6-ringed soul skills used by an ordinary soul master. Wang Qiuer seemed to sense something, and stopped. When the poisonous fluid was about to touch her, it suddenly stopped in mid-air, as if it had been frozen. It was converted into ice crystals, and the stench of the poison also disappeared. Meng Hongchen's life power seemed to have been sucked dry. Her entire face turned pale white, and she took 2 steps back. She lost control of her voice as she said, "Impossible, impossible. How can my corrosive ice be frozen?" She wasn't the only one who was surprised. Xiao Hongchen, who was clearly aware of his sister's abilities, was also astonished. He was in his martial soul true body right now. When he realized things were amiss, he changed form once again. The greatest strength of his golden toad true body was that it could quickly turn into a soul tool of any form. It was different from using soul skills. When he entered such a state, the soul tools that he agglomerated were no longer restricted by size, only by his own cultivation. It also meant that any soul tool that he formed now was at least class 7. This video will end here.